With the NFL trade deadline less than a month away, the Saints have an interesting decision to make on wide receiver Chris Olave. What should that decision be? We'll discuss that right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'm your host, Chris Vogel, and as always, the Straight Up Saints podcast is brought to you by Scott Fickner. Injury lawyers have been injured in any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, hurt on offshore. Scott Fickner handles it all. You give him a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. The Saints came up short in Week 6 against the New England Patriots, losing 25-19 in a game that, frankly, they had their chances. They had their chances, especially in the second half. Juwan Johnson fumble didn't help. And I would just say whether it's an errant throw or a drop, whichever way you want to categorize it as, Rattler and Chris Olave weren't on the same page on the big plays, I would say. Olave still statistically had a really good game in Week 6, finished with 6 catches for 98 yards and his best game of the season in terms of yardage. But there were so many more plays to be had. And I would argue today was one of those games where had Olave and Rattler, connected, it could have been, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns like that. That's how explosive of a game Olave could have had. Now, some of it falls on the quarterback. Absolutely. Spencer Rattler missed a couple throws that you want him to make, especially for Saints fans who are hoping he develops into the franchise guy. You want to see him connect on those throws. And obviously starting off the game with a 53-yard pass to finish the rest of it with just 45 yards between that connection. When you view it that way, it's a little bit disappointing. That said, Olave is still a really good player. And I want to make it clear, regardless of what way the Saints decide to go, I do think he is a solid football player. That said, the Saints have to be honest with themselves about where they are right now as a franchise and where they expect to be next year and the year after that. Because Olave is due for an extension. And viewing the current wide receiver market, if you look around the league, guys are getting paid right now. In terms of, what are the top salaries? Obviously, Olave is not going to come close to the Jamar Chases and the Justin Jeffersons who are right now pushing that, really high mark. Chase is at $40 million. Jefferson's at $35. But if you look elsewhere around the league, Jalen Waddle, $28 million a year. Jamison Williams, $26 million a year. Devontae Smith, $25 million a year. Even if you go up a little bit of a weight class, T. Higgins, $28.7 million a year. Garrett Wilson, former Ohio State teammate of Chris Olave, $32.5 million a year. Now, I think the $28-27 million range is kind of like where you're looking at for Olave. The Saints have to really decide here, is that what they want to do? Do they want to commit $25 to $30 million a year to Chris Olave, or do they want to trade him before the deadline? Now, let's be real. If they trade him before the deadline, their offense will take a hit. Their passing game will have to adjust. But if you don't think Chris Olave is going to be part of your long-term plans and you don't expect to sign him to a long-term extension, I think the Saints should absolutely explore that market. And it will potentially hurt in terms of the weapons that Spencer Rattler is going to have, and I don't love that aspect of it. But I do think the Saints have to be really, really honest with themselves when they're assessing this roster for the 2026 season. Do you think Chris Olave is going to be on it? Go one step further. Do you think he's going to be on the 2027 roster? If the answer is no, then you should trade Olave. I'd imagine there'll be a good market for him. He's a very solid player, and maybe you can get a day 2 pick. Maybe get a 3rd-round pick for Chris Olave. Maybe more, not really sure. It depends what the market's going to look like and how aggressive teams are at the deadline. If that's the case, that's the route you go. Now, if the Saints believe that they think Rattler and Olave have something, or if Rattler's not the guy, Olave and Chuck can have something, or if Chuck's not the guy, whoever they draft next year, they'd like him to have number 12 as one of his go-to targets, then yeah, I'd understand. But I'd like the Saints to make that decision fairly soon. This uncertainty of what's going on with Olave, if this whole season plays out and then you end up trading him next year or you end up just playing him out on that 5th-year option, I don't know. That to me, that seems a bit odd. Trading him in the offseason is not as bad. But if he were to play out the 5th-year option in New Orleans, that'd be a little bit of a head-scratcher, in my opinion. So, I think that this team just be brutally honest with your assessment. Do you think that you're going to keep this guy, or do you think you're going to move on? And if the answer is move on, see what the market's out. I think teams like the Steelers will need wide receiver help. I think other teams in the NFC could use wide receiver help. And look, if you're the Saints, Why not? You're in rebuild mode right now anyway. You're going with the youth movement. I think it makes sense. And I want to say this about Chris Olave, about the player himself. I think he's a good player. I think we saw many times in week 6 against the Patriots, there are going to be times where Rattler's not going to throw a perfect ball. A good amount of times, actually. Can your guy make the play? And Olave simply didn't. And I look around the league. I see Kayshon Boutte for the Patriots make some big plays in week 6. We saw Demario Douglas make a couple of big plays. Goddamn, you put on the freaking Buccaneers game and Tez Johnson makes an insane catch that, let's be honest, Olave didn't make it. It will look exactly the same as what we saw in the Patriots-Saints game. So Olave is a good player, but I don't believe he's a number one. I don't know if he ever will be a number one. I think he really is a really, really quality Robin to someone's Batman. Saints don't got that Batman right now. And I look around and I look at the Eagles and what Kellen Moore had over there. When you got A.J. Brown, it's awesome having Devontae Smith as that number 2. And Olave could be that Devontae Smith, but the Saints don't have that A.J. Brown. And do you want to commit $25 to $30 million to your Robin without even having that Batman in that X position, that possession receiver, that big-bodied guy that can make those plays? It's a question that the front office and only the front office can answer. But with the trade deadline coming up, we'll probably get one soon. So we'll see what happens with Chris Olave. I'm in the camp of, if you're not going to keep him, maybe just look around the trade market and see what's out there. But look, I can understand if the Saints want to ride out the season and then make their decision in 2026, since they do have one more year of team control for Olave. So we'll see what happens, but let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. Do you think Olave should be on the move? Do you think the Saints should keep him? Do you think the Saints should extend him? Sound off in the comment section below. And as always, guys, make sure to subscribe to Boot Crew Media for more from the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation.